I'm House Republican Leader Lisa Demuth, and happy to have finally got to this point. As you know, the school resource officer concerns and the changes to the law last year that happened, House Republicans have been pushing for a fix for this issue since August. This easily could have been done through a special session if called by the governor. We could have had this done before our students even went back to school. But we're happy to be here now, looking forward to the time on the House floor in just a short period of time where we can actually get a correction to this error, to what was not right. You're going to be hearing from a couple of my colleagues today with more details on what we're looking for, but we are very, very glad that this will provide more school safety by bringing our school resource officers back to the schools that choose to have them, providing more safety for teachers, for staff, and for students. With that, I'll turn it over to Representative Jeff Witte.
Thank you. Back in July, I was asked by law enforcement about the SRO bill and the confusion that it was going to bring for our school resource officers in their schools. And at the time, it was said that this was a political move, but honestly, this was a personal move. For 27 years, 4 of those years, I was a school resource officer. I understood the importance of building relationships with the students, teachers, and staff. I understood the importance of being a resource. I understood the importance of preventing and deterring crimes from happening within our schools to keep our students and teachers and staff safe. But most importantly, I knew this was an opportunity for us to build trust with our students in our schools in no other way that you can when you're working on the streets. We continued to get the story out there, and you guys carried it for, I believe, 7 weeks, and I thank you for that. We kept hearing from parents. We kept hearing from students. We kept hearing from law enforcement. In the student survey, over 94% wanted their SROs back in their schools. And over 71% said they would contact their school resource officer if there was an issue. That's pretty powerful data. So in October, when there wasn't going to be a special session, we started with a roundtable discussion, and we brought our key stakeholders to the table. And those were our teachers, our city staff, our county, and also our law enforcement. And we sat around with representatives from both education and law enforcement and senators, and we listened. We learned and we understood the issue. And that is how we're able to lead effectively. We got back into session, and we weren't a part of the discussions early on, but the importance continued, and we needed to get a fix. We need to get our school resource officers back into schools. I am thankful all along. I've had my hand extended out to the governor, to the Democrat representatives asking to help with a bipartisan fix. We all want our schools to be safe, our students, teachers, and staff. Over the last 7 months, we've seen videos and heard stories of dangerous and chaotic episodes in schools all across Minnesota. So it was important that we had an urgency to get this done. And when my colleagues from across the aisle reached out and had a conversation and allowed me to be a part of it, it allowed me to bring my experience as a law enforcement officer, but also, more importantly, as a school resource officer. And we were able to come up with a bipartisan fix to this issue that, quite honestly, didn't need to be if it would have went the correct process and would have came through public safety. I think we could have done this work back in February when Senator Zach Duckworth pointed it out in a Senate committee hearing. So I'm excited that we'll be able to have a bipartisan fix to this problem, and we'll be able to get our SROs back into school. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Representative Ben Bakeberg. I have the privilege to represent 54B, that's Jordan, Prior Lake, part of Shakopee, and then the surrounding townships. I am happy and excited that we're finally here today to resolve this issue. But let's keep in mind that there have been 7 months of school. We could have taken care of this, as Representative Witte outlined earlier. It has been a privilege to work hand in hand with a number of school resource officers during my career as a teacher and as a principal. School resource officers are one important aspect of the overall plan that school districts have if they choose to make sure that teachers, students, and educators across the board are safe every single day. In fact, within many school communities, school resource officers are called school relationship officers because of the amazing work that they do to build relationships, not only with students, but also educators. Educators want kids in their classrooms. Kids cannot learn if they're not in their classroom. You can't learn math if you're not in math class. It's that simple. Students want to be there as well, and any educator that you talk to will acknowledge that there is a disparity in the suspensions that are happening across Minnesota. The simple fact is that the legislation passed last year that's soft on discipline is tying the hands of educators across the state. And if you talk to educators, one of the most frustrating things that they deal with is student behaviors, and many of them are leaving the profession for that simple reason. And I see some of your heads nodding as well. One of the examples is the ban on K-3 suspensions. Another example is a ban on recess detention. Now there's obviously students need to move. There's no doubt about that. That's the purpose of recess. But when we do these total bans, we are tying the hands of our professionals, and they're not allowed to use the resources available to them to reteach expectations that they teach over and over and over again. It ties the hands, and they're not able to hold students accountable for their behavior, and it doesn't allow us to partner with families the way that we want to. Overwhelmingly, educators have asked for simple guidance. On Tuesday morning, when a student has been disruptive day after day after day, they've gone through all of the things that the department has outlined, and the behavior doesn't change. All that educators are asking for are simple answers to how do I handle that kid. Every student, or when a student is disruptive in the classroom, the learning environment for every single student in that class is disruptive. And every single teacher trying to teach isn't able to do their job to the best of the ability. That's the thing that gets lost. Educators should be empowered to keep their classrooms safe, period. Educators should be empowered to keep their classrooms safe so that teachers can teach and students can learn. The legislation passed last year, the soft on discipline legislation, did not do this. Educators know that behavior is communication, and we are working extremely hard to address the increasing needs of our students across the state of Minnesota. But we do this in collaboration with families, and what happened last year does not help us collaborate more with families. To be blunt, educators don't want representatives or senators from St. Paul telling them how to manage their classroom. Thank you, and with that, I would turn it back over to Lead Demuth.
Do we have any questions?
Are you going to try to do a floor amendment on suspensions during the SRO fix?
We are going to stay very much focused on the school resource officer bill fix. That will be our intention today.
So one of the sort of like sticking points that I hear from some advocates who say the new bill, right, like does go a long way in the right direction, but still gets stuck on the provision allowing officers to use prone restraints, even in very narrow circumstances. Why fight so hard for that? It's already banned in special education settings. It's banned in prisons, correctional facilities, right? So why allow even that tool if it's banned in so many other areas to be something that, you know, is a tool that law enforcement can use on a student in a school.
So I guess I'm trying to figure this out a little bit. So you're saying our schools are like prisons?
No, it's banned in correctional institutions, right? The pro
Okay.
restraint. It's banned for use on students enrolled in special education. Why maintain that as a tactic that a school resource officer may use on any student?
Yeah, so the SROs, or the school resource officers as police officers, follow 60906. That's where the clarity needed to be, because under the new bill, there's 2 rules. And that's something that can be discussed, but right now, this is what brings the clarity to this bill.
Okay, but there's that carve out, right, that specifically says, in very narrow circumstances, a police officer may use a pro restraint. No?
That's not true.
That's not,
No.
okay.
No, that's not specifically prohibited. There are things in restraints when someone is on the ground that are prohibited, but straight prone restraints are not. And to your prison question, we've got a bill tomorrow in public safety that will bring the prison, the correctional officer use of force standards in conjunction with the rest of the use of force standards.
Can someone talk about the, I guess, crafting, molding of this bill to certain language that was adopted through these committee hearings, through the session? I mean, we had the bill laid over at one point for more stakeholder input, that sort of thing.
So the bill got laid over. That was done by the committee chair, Chair Moeller. After the Burnsville incident, I went up to Chair Moeller and asked her if we could take a pause. And the pause was needed because I think it was going to get, there was a lot of emotion. And it allowed the discussion points. And I think that was key because then it allowed us to work together, build that relationship, have the groups talking. You know, a lot of times law enforcement took some compromise, and so did other groups. And when you have a bipartisan bill like this, not everyone's getting everything that they want. That's the compromise. But I think it's a stronger bill because we listened and we worked together.
Representative Witte, I think you said earlier that you guys first raised objections last February, Duckworth did. Why didn't you guys do anything last session? I mean, your whole point has been all along that the Democrats should have fixed this in the summer, but you guys knew last February and you had months to fix it last session, did you not?
And quite honestly, I did not know about it. It never came through public safety. And so it went through the education part. It was brought up in education, but it never came through public safety. I wish it would have, because I think we could have done the work that we're doing now. And that's where I speak about that process. I think there's a process that should be followed, and I think if it would have came through public safety, we would have had this least discussed, and you would have had the stakeholders at the table. You would have had law enforcement at the table. Law enforcement did not know.
You guys and go, hey, you guys, we have this huge problem. Let's do something about it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's separate. It was never brought up. He asked the chair to bring it through the proper channels into proper committees, and that's up to the chair to make those decisions. So the chair chose not to bring it through public safety.
Are you confident your Senate Republican colleagues will accept the language in the House version? Like if they get to vote on the House version as it is, that they'll support this?
You know, I think it's really important to realize that this bill has been worked on by all stakeholders, and that is the intent. So we're hearing it on the House floor. I can't speak directly to what the Senate is going to choose to do, but they are very much aware of the stakeholders that have all been involved. We are in constant communication with them, but until it actually gets to the floor, not knowing what the majority might want to do with it, I can't speak to that at this time. Do we have one more question?
On that topic, some of the Senate Republicans, and I know that their bill is not exactly like this one right now, but maybe you can speak to this issue that they didn't like the model policy or the trainings to be administered by the post board. This bill allows for that. I'm wondering if someone can speak to why you accepted that, why you guys have supported that, and maybe some of the politics around that.
That's a great question, because my amendment removed the model policy. I think that was where most of the politics were going to probably be involved. And so we had it under 60906 and the education piece. What has changed is when I was able to get involved with Chair Moeller and Representative Frazier, we discussed that if the post board's doing it, we moved up the date so they'd have their discussions by December, and that the groups would come together. Instead of individually, they came together, and it wasn't just decided by the post board, but these groups are going to meet 3 times, which I think is very helpful, because once again, they'll be able to listen, learn, understand the issues, and talk amongst themselves instead of getting it broken down individually. So I think that was a key part in all this, was when they decided to do 3 sessions all together, working together through it, and then having it done by December. They moved it up by a year.
And by all together, you mean not just the post board, other law enforcement
Yep,
groups?
all the different stakeholders that are a part of this.
Whereas initially, it was just the post board got kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And then it was individually speaking to each of the groups.
Do you have any idea right now how many law enforcement agencies are still keeping their SROs outside the building that will eventually move them back in?
I've heard 40. So I'm hoping that we can get them all back into school with this fix today. And I think this will obviously keep our schools, our students, and our teachers safe, but it'll also give our parents some peace of mind. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.